Guys, welcome back to another Tuesday Talk. I am so lucky to have such a valuable member of the personal finance community, an amazing person. I have Yanely here, also known as Miss BeHelpful. Yanely, thank you so much for your time today.
Of course. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
I have to be honest and forefront. I'm a new subscriber. Jason from Honest Finance a couple weeks ago was like, "You're from New York and you don't know about Yanely?" And I'm like, "Bro, I got to be honest. I really don't." And
That's so
it's
funny.
been weeks of binge watching your content and just learning about the type of person you are. And
Yeah.
it has been awesomely incredible. I think there's going to be a lot of value here that you're going to bring to my subscriber base. And whenever there's a strong, powerful woman out there speaking about money, I think it's always an excellent, excellent thing. So
That's
I want,
right.
I kind of want to start like from the beginning. I've done a little bit of research and watching your videos and stuff. And you're from a pretty big family. You have like 8 or 9 siblings, born and bred in New York. What was it like? Has money always been a part of the life? Like what's the early beginnings for you?
Yeah. So honestly, it's probably like one side of the spectrum. It's never somewhere in the middle of the spectrum when it comes to low income families and also immigrants. I mean, I can't say this about every immigrant family that's low income, but a lot of them, generally tend to stick to one side of the spectrum, which is you talk about money so much all the time that it's so stressful. And it's always looming over your head, this like constant lack of money, or you never talk about it. You literally just deny that there's a problem and you just ignore it. And if we don't talk about it, it doesn't exist really, and we just go on with our happy lives. And so for my family, it was we never talked about money. We knew that if my dad came home mad, then you especially don't talk about money because that means he didn't really make any money. And so it was the kind of thing where it was like a very negative point of conversation, and you rarely if ever talked about it at all. But yeah, there's 9 of us, so there's 4 guys and 5 girls, so 4 brothers, 5 sisters. I'm one of the 5 sisters, and I'm the youngest girl. 3 younger brothers, 1 older brother. All the girls are older than me, so it was nice for me to have so many older brothers and sisters, because for me being number 6 in line, I was able to watch the first 5 make a lot of mistakes, and some of them I repeated because we didn't talk about it. But
Hmm.
for the most part, especially when it comes to dating and a lot of mistakes with, just social relationships, friends, boyfriends, girlfriends, I was able to really pick up on a lot of the mistakes they made and learn from them. So I think having a big family was actually a good thing for me.
Wow. After busting your butt, you were awarded a full scholarship, big time school. I'll let you say where you went to school and kind of like I'm curious on that path because you go Ivy League, you pretty much can go anywhere you want. So what was that really that path to Brown for you?
Yeah, it's funny. When I got accepted to Brown, my mom and my dad, they were like, "What kind of college is named after a color?" Like, because my parents, they come from Dominican Republic. They're not raised here. They're not born here. They don't really understand the college culture and like the prestige of the Ivy League or whatever. Like school has like some sort of prestige to it. They don't. That doesn't mean anything to them. And my parents, they never even went past the 3rd grade because they grew up in a very poor, like rural area in the Dominican Republic where you had to basically, if you had any kids, pretty soon by the time they got to 8 years old, they had to start working the land and helping with the animals, because your family, we're talking about like poverty in a developing country, which is very different from poverty in America.
Right.
So because my parents never really went to school, I think there was more pressure for us as the first generation in America to like really bust our butts in school. We couldn't play around. You can't be talking around thinking it's cute to just slack off in school, because you're going to get in trouble with mom and dad when you come home if the teacher called, or if there was a no, or you didn't have a good test score. So my parents were very strict with the academics because they really valued school because they didn't get a chance to go. And so for me, I took that to heart. Like, damn, mom and dad did not get a chance to read, to go to school, to do math, anything past 3rd grade. Like, if I slack off, that's such a disrespect to the effort they put into bringing us to this country so we can have a better life. So I was definitely nerdy, not even gonna front. I was that kid who was like bringing an apple to the teacher's pet, always got 90s on my test. If I got anything less than a 90, I was literally about to like tear up and cry. Like, why didn't I get a 90? And I try to balance that with being cool. So I was like funny. So I was like the funny kid, and dramatic. I was entertaining with my like animated, antics. So I was always like striking a balance. It was hard for me to like be poor and also be cool, and also be smart. So that was hard for me socially, to grow up and like, still have some street cred of being cool when you're nerdy and poor. It's like, so it's kind of hard. But once I figured that out, I figured out like my sweet spot of like where my place was socially. And I think that helped me to become a little bit more proud of like where I come from and the struggle that my family had been through. And I use that a lot in my college application process. And I talk to that as a point of pride. Like I have grit because I came from this background. If I can make it through the situation, I can make it through a lot of different things in the world that are stressful for most people. But I can make it through that. Any challenge that comes my way, I'm ready to face adversity. So I really use that to my advantage. And I think even to this day, I use it to my advantage. I'm a very gritty person. Like I don't let people mess with me. I got thick skin, and I think that helps me, it helped
Right.
me. So it definitely helped me to get to Brown. So I went to Brown University on a full scholarship, and it was partially because of my academics, but also because of my financial need. So they're need blind. When you get in, they look at your need after you get accepted. And if you have a really strong need financially, then they will figure out what plan needs to be put in place so that you don't have to get out of college having a lot of debt. So that's one of the beautiful things about Brown. It's very rare that it has that program that allows students to graduate with minimal debt. So yeah, I got very, very fortunate to have that opportunity.
What did you study at Brown? I know you did some studying abroad as well in France. Well, academically, what were you doing at Brown?
Yeah, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Honestly, when I got there, I was like, I'm just lucky to be here. Let me just not mess up. Like I didn't know, I was just like, whatever, I'm gonna figure this out. But I really liked urban studies because I knew I had a sweet spot for coming back to home to my community. I knew that I didn't want to go work in Wall Street. I knew that I didn't want to go corporate. That's just not in my nature. So I wanted to figure out what can I do to come back. So I studied urban studies. I focused on urban planning and development. So looking at how to enrich communities, public spaces, parks, the housing, public housing. And then I had an art history double major with art history and visual arts. So I was an artsy kid. I continued doing art in art history, and then I kind of focused in a little bit on urban communities. But after college, I actually ended up teaching. I joined Teach for America. I became an elementary school teacher, and it's funny because I didn't use anything that I got my degree in. I ended up doing something totally different.
I know, and we'll get to Teach for America because as a teacher, I know that even that is not a program that you just walk into. But I want to
Yeah,
just go back to the college thing for a second because
yeah,
people hear scholarship, and as a teacher, I hear, oh, they got lucky, they got a scholarship, and they don't realize the work that you need to put in. And but that didn't come without mistakes. And you talk about it openly on your YouTube channel, which we'll get to, that you came out with a scholarship, but you came out with a ton of credit card debt as well. Can you talk about like what that credit card debt was for? And when did you realize that, oh man, I have a lot of credit card debt and this is an issue? How do you go from like urban studies to, oh my God, I got so much credit card debt?
yeah. So I mean, when I was in college, basically I was on my scholarship, so it covered tuition and it covered my dorm and my meal plan, a very basic meal plan, right? So once I would run out of meal credits, I'm like, oh crap, or what am I going to do for food? So of course, I was using the credit card a lot for eating. I was also using the credit card a lot for shopping, clothes, things for my dorm room, curtains, speakers. I remember I got like a rug for my room. I mean, a carpet. I was doing like way too much, honestly. But at the end of the day, I was just trying to keep up socially with my peers. If I went to my friend's dorm room and I noticed that she had something, I'm like, oh, maybe I should put speakers in my room. Maybe I should put curtains out. Maybe I should decorate my wall with some posters. And so I was just really trying to keep up really socially. And a lot of the kids at Brown were much more wealthy, backgrounds than me. So trying to keep up with people that are not in your lane is like, it's like you're pretty much self-sabotaging yourself because you're
Yep.
never going to really be on their level. And so for me, I felt that pressure and I started to use my credit cards to buy anything and everything. Of course, I needed to buy my textbooks and lab supplies for my science classes and art supplies for my arts classes. And of course, for certain fees that weren't covered by my tuition, like my scholarship covered tuition, but it didn't cover going abroad to France. And I studied French, so I wanted to make sure I had a chance to study abroad. So because of that, I had to take on a student loan that was like about $5,000. But the credit card debt was really mostly just food, shopping, hanging out, going to parties, paying for taxis, paying for tickets to the gala, paying for movies, bowling, going to the mall. And for me, I wish I had a little bit more self control to be able to say, at a certain point you have to kind of stop and say, all right, I can only do so much this month because I know I have to pay it back. But I had no understanding of how bad the debt would compound if I just made my minimum payments. So I was pretty much just making minimum payments until I realized it was $20,000. I was like, oh, I got to get out of this mess. Like, this is insane.
So you spoke about how you entered Teach for America. I'd love for you to speak exactly just quickly for people that don't know what the Teach for America program is. And
Yeah.
when you realized this credit card debt was happening, were you already teaching or was this before that teaching career?
Yeah, so actually Teach for America and my credit stuff happens perfectly at the same time. I graduated over the summer. I did the Teach for America training. So Teach for America, for short TFA, is basically a really intense teacher program that allows you to come straight out of college, do pretty much what I would consider to be like a boot camp over the summer to get you up to speed on what you normally might learn in like a teacher master's program, but you're trying to get as much as you can in a crash course over the summer. And then you're literally thrown into the classroom the fall after you graduate college. And you're placed in schools that are very high need. So communities where there's demographic of students that are very, very, very high need of a high quality teacher. So schools that are underfunded or under-resourced. And those are particularly the schools, Title I funded schools. That's really where they look to help the community by placing a teacher who's willing to go above and beyond. So yeah, I was placed in an elementary school in Brooklyn, not too far from where I grew up. And I started teaching. I think I was making like $39,000 or $40,000 a year my first year. And I thought, oh, I'm making 40,000. I'm rich. Like I'm gonna be paid. Like I thought I was gonna be balling out of control. And you know, little did I know, like that's really not much more than minimum wage after taxes in New York City. So I was like, okay, I had to pay my rent, I had to buy groceries, I had to get my Metro card to go to work, and from work, I had to buy lunch. I had, you know, by the time I finished all my bills and all the things, I barely had money to pay the credit card minimum balance, the minimum balance of my credit card. So that's when it really hit me. Like I did not go to college to come back home, get a job, become a professional, be well respected in my family, but still be in the paycheck to paycheck cycle, the same as or worse than my own parents. So
Right.
I have to figure out what did I do wrong and how do I fix it. And that's when I just started reading all the books I could get my hands on about personal finance. To and from work on the train, I would read, I would listen to podcasts, I would watch TED Talks, everything I could get my hands on around personal finance. I was just soaking it in and teaching it to myself. And I just became obsessed.
What
I
were,
became obsessed.
off the top of your head, if you remember, what were some of those early books and early podcasts that you were listening to?
Yeah, the first book was Susie Orman, Women and Money. I bought it at Dwayne Reed for $9. I will never forget. It was the best purchase I ever made. Then after her that, I kind of read her other book, which was the money book for the young, fabulous, and broke. Then I read The Millionaire Next Door. I read The Richest Man in Babylon. I did a little bit of Dave Ramsey. I read like just honestly everything I could get my hands on. I was just reading everything. I read a lot of David Bach. I read Jim Collins. I read The Simple Path to Wealth. I just started reading slowly over the years, a little bit more sophisticated literature. But once I kind of got into it, and the thing is, at first, when you start reading this stuff, you have to either really be in a bad situation financially where you're desperate to learn this, or you just have to be super nerdy. I happen to be a combination of both.
Both.
I was a combination of both. And what happened to me was I got lucky that I had enough debt that I was so desperate to learn it. And when I started reading it, I was so nerdy. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And also I felt like there was a little social justice component to it because I felt like I was deprived of this knowledge, you know, like people that don't look like me, that don't have my background, that don't talk like me, that don't share, you know, my experiences, they get taught at home or in school these concepts that I never learned. And so I kind of felt a little bit of social justice that was at stake. I'm like, okay, I need to teach this to myself because no one else is going to teach it to me. And this is the only way I'm going to break the cycle of poverty. So it kind of felt very heavy. And that's what motivated me more to read and to learn more.
I know exactly where you're coming from because I am the nerd and the obsessive. Like I'm the same exact. I have every single spreadsheet. I was the definition of analysis paralysis, and luckily I backed off of that a little bit. And
Yeah.
my next question, what I'm curious about is when was Miss BeHelpful born? You know, when did it go from I'm reading for myself to I am going to now become a beacon of light for others? I'm always curious about like that first video that you upload. I know you started the channel. It says 2015. Did you start uploading right away or were you watching? How did it go from this to that?
So I was teaching and up until 2014. In 2014, I was like, I was a little bit unhappy, right? I was like, all right, I know I'm not going to retire as a teacher. And I started teaching in 2011. I was like, I know I'm not going to retire as a teacher. I could feel it in my heart that this daily routine coming in and out, working with elementary kids, it's a lot of work, elementary school, because you don't really get a lot of breaks. You don't have preps a lot like high school, and you don't have different sections. So like sometimes in high school and middle school, teachers see a lot of different kids for every period. When the bell rings, the kids change. It was the same 30 kids all day from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. And I worked at a charter school, which was an extended day schedule. So I couldn't leave the building until like 4:30 every day. So I was there from 7 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. every day. And honestly, most of the time the bell would ring at the end of the day and I couldn't leave because I had to do my bulletin board. I had to grade papers. I had to call and text parents. I had to do a lot of emails. I had to lesson plan. I had to do things in my room that I couldn't really go home anyway. So I was just very unhappy because I felt burnt out. And I felt like, all right, teaching is really fun. I felt I made a really good impact in my community. My students taught me a lot, but I'm ready for my next, chapter of my life. So I wanted to still do education. So I moved to a private company called Kumon. I was doing after school math and reading. And I was basically running a center in Midtown Manhattan. It was like 400 kids. It was a huge center. And it was a lot of work, but it was teaching me about the business side of education. If you want to run a tutoring company and you're charging tuition and you have to collect money from families, like this was looking at a different form of education as a business. And I was interested about that a little bit more. But at the end of the day, the curriculum that they had and the setup of the structure of the center, the flow of the day, it quickly became boring to me. I was like, oh yeah, I'm over it. And I was like, after a year and a half. So in order to deal with being bored with my day job, I started to do YouTube on the side just to be able to enjoy my life because I was like, oh man, I hate, my job in the morning is not really what I love. And I have all of this knowledge and this passion around personal finance. I had just became debt free at the beginning of 2015. So at the end of 2014, beginning of 2015. So I was like ready to stand on top of the mountain and yell, I'm finally paid off all my debt. Everybody needs to know, And so YouTube felt like the perfect place for me because it was a great place for me to talk. I like to talk. I'm talkative. I'm very chatty. And also I have my personality. I'm very animated and dramatic. So I feel like I could highlight the things about my personality and my knowledge in a way that would help other people. So I knew like I am nerdy. I like to read. But a lot of my cousins and my friends, they prefer to look at videos on YouTube and Instagram. They would rather not read blogs or read books. They find this content to be boring. So I figured I could be translating what I read in the books to like regular people in English, plain English, through my videos. So that's when I started in the summer of 2015.
Yeah, so many times people say me the same thing, like, Brad, why would you make these videos? Can't people read them in a book? I'm like, yeah, but they don't.
They don't. They
So
don't.
so they can
Exactly.
just put it on and we're all of our story. It's incredible. And the one thing I've seen through my 2 years of YouTube is like that end journey is always the same, but the path, that's what keeps people coming back. And your channel is incredible. I'm going to leave a link down below. Like in the
Yeah.
first 5 seconds, you grab people's attention and it doesn't even matter what you're going to be talking about. You just have this aura, like you said, this aura around you that says, you better listen to me because I'm going to tell you something and it's going to make your life better. And I love that. So the YouTube thing, it's been growing. I think you're at like 35,000 subscribers or
Yeah.
so. Yeah,
Yeah.
even
We
more
just
than that.
passed 35.
And you
Woo-hoo. Yep.
just hit 10,000 followers on Instagram as well. I saw
Yep.
that post that you just had. So that's great stuff. But YouTube isn't this is your hobby still. Like I
Yeah.
look at your nonprofit history. You have climbed up what looks to be like from an elementary school up to a pretty prestigious position where you're at right now, all through helping people along the way. Every one of your jobs along your resume, it's so impressive. I even texted Jason, I'm like, this girl's resume is unbelievable. And I think it shows a lot about your character because, it's so easy to go on YouTube. I'm sure you're making a couple bucks off YouTube and it's okay.
Yeah.
But you didn't just settle in your job. Like you said, I didn't settle for this. I didn't settle for that. I always wanted more. I always thought I could give more.
Yeah.
And you worked your way up. Right now, your current position, which I'm definitely going to talk about because I'm so interested. Can you just talk about the evolution from
Yeah.
up to where you're at right now, work wise?
Yeah, so the first job after I knew that I didn't want to be in the classroom teaching in a traditional sense was that company that I worked at called Kuman, which is a private company. It's a Japanese learning program that is very strict. You have to memorize and you have to just do the same problems every day until you memorize them. And I could tell the kids weren't very happy or joyful when they were learning. Like at first they were because it was new and fun. But then after they got used to the routine, they're like, they hated it. The kids would cry coming in the door like, I don't want to go to Kuman. I hate this. And their parents would be like, you better go. And I was like, I don't want to be a part of this thing that kids really don't enjoy. So basically I decided to move back to the nonprofit sector because I was missing that mission driven work rather than like the money driven aspect of it. They were like, you have to increase tuition. You have to or sales on tuition. You have to get more parents to sign up their kids. You have to, and I was like, I don't like that. I just want to help the parents that are here. I don't want to. So I knew I wasn't like a salesperson. I knew I wasn't trying to look at the numbers. And so I went back to nonprofit route and I worked at an organization called Reading Partners, which allowed me to still be in public schools, which made me so happy. I still got to see the students in, the elementary schools, which I love. And instead of teaching in front of them, I would pull them out and manage a tutoring program where they would partner up with the tutors and all the kids that were behind in reading would get extra reading tutoring from these tutors who would volunteer through our program. And then they would go back to the classroom and hopefully within a year or two of the tutoring, they would catch back up and be on grade level and reading again, so that they wouldn't fall too far behind after, like, by the time third and fourth grade comes. There's a lot of indicators that show if you're not reading on grade level by fourth grade, is a lot more likely that you're going to have all kinds of problems in high school, and even for brown boys of color and Hispanic students. It shows that you can even go to jail. You're more likely to go to jail if you're not reading on grade level by fourth grade. So there was this really strong mission there and pressure to really help the community through reading. And I love that. I really love that. I love reading. I told you I'm a nerd. But then after like 2 or 3 years there, I was like, okay, this was great, but I feel like I've hit my peak as a manager. Like I've learned everything I wanted to learn about managing people, and I want to really take my personal finance hobby further and work more with personal finance. And so at that point, I decided to leave the nonprofit reading organization, and I was just taking the summer off to figure out what I wanted to do. I was considering even trying to do YouTube full time, but the reason why I don't want to do YouTube full time is because I love physical, like, connections with people. Like, I like hugging people, holding hands with people, shaking their hands, talking to them face to face, and being in front of a room of people, human beings, not like a screen. And that to me makes the difference between my happiness on a day-to-day basis and, feeling a little sad and like feeling like it doesn't give me joy to just be on the computer all the time. So as much as I love YouTube and connecting with people on there, I need that human connection element. Just because I'm like that. I'm just, I don't know. My love language is physical touch. I need to hug people and hold hands. And I'm that, PDA kind of girl. So basically I knew I wanted to go back to being in front of people. And this organization reached out to me. Actually, Next Gen Personal Finance is a nonprofit that pushes personal finance education. So it literally combined my nerdy passion for personal finance and my training in education as a teacher, and combine them. So they basically create curriculum and do teacher training specifically in personal finance education at the high school level. So helping high school teachers include personal finance in the classroom. And hopefully it's a full semester class, but a lot of states don't actually have full semester worth of personal finance right now. And that's one of the things we're trying to advocate for more. But in the meantime, if you have an economics class or an AP class that, after the AP exam, you have a couple weeks left, then those are perfect opportunities of time to infuse personal finance into the class for your students. So we basically give you materials, give you free training, everything you need to be able to teach it in a confident way that will really help your students out. So that's where I'm at now. And I really love it.
I kind of like see the program you're doing is like you're kind of advocating for, hey, listen, there's a lot of people out there and this needs to be talked about. And are you guys going into schools and saying to schools like, hey, listen, you guys need to start adapting this, or are they more contacting you guys?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both, honestly. So what happens is schools will reach out to us and say, hey, we want to do more financial education. Can we use your resources? And a lot of people don't realize that it's free. And honestly, as a New Yorker, you could probably relate to this. Like, people are skeptical when you say it's free. They're like, what you mean is free? What's the catch? If it's free, it's probably crappy, or you're going to put up a paywall real soon, and then I'm going to have to start paying. Right. So they're kind of skeptical. But the reality is our organization is completely funded by an endowment that was created in place by one of our co-founders. So he had a lot of success as an entrepreneur in the past. And instead of kind of, taking his money and doing whatever else with it, he decided the best thing he could do to invest in the country was to provide financial education for the next generation. So he called it Next Generation Personal Finance. And then basically he put the money in place to make sure that the organization is funded directly through the endowment. So we don't have to worry about fundraising or writing grants or getting money from banks and institutions. Because, when you take handouts come with handcuffs. If the bank gives you a grant, or whatever money, you have to do what the bank said. You have to teach things the way the bank wants you to teach it. Or why don't you take out those lessons about overdraft fees? They don't need to learn about that. Right. Yes, they do. Yes, so, so to us, it's really great to have this endowment because it allows us to keep the curriculum unbiased. And that is one of the things that I think is very important in personal finance. As much as I really loved reading the first Dave Ramsey book that I read, Total Money Makeover, it was amazing, had a lot of helpful things in there. But for me, I feel that he really pushes his values on you in a way where he's like, you have to agree with his values. And for me, I really like it to be unbiased. I prefer for you to say, here is all of the possibilities. Depending on the type of person you are, make the best choice for you. Don't just do the snowball method because I said to do the snowball method. Here's both. Here's avalanche, here's snowball. Here's research that supports both. Make the decision that's best for you given the context of your situation. So that's how I like to educate. I don't like to tell people, this is the one thing, this is the one way that you have to deal with money. This is the way to do it. I think give the information and let people critically think about what makes sense for them. So, that's how I think we approach education a little bit differently. And especially in personal finance, I think it's so important to keep it unbiased.
I want to post a link the next time because you also are offering things outside of like high school classrooms, and too, you guys are doing like little meetups and group get-togethers in different communities. People can search that, right? Can you talk about that for a quick second?
Yeah, so anybody who is an educator, whatever capacity that means, can come to our events. So we have free professional development training events for educators. And literally that means in any capacity. If you educate people in a church, if you educate people in a community center or in a nonprofit, whatever, if you're a teacher in the classroom, then you can sign up for our financial boot camps, which is for short, it's called FinCamp. And FinCamp is a 1 day, training, and it's super hands-on. It's super fun. You get to network with other teachers and educators from all around the country. And, we try to make these events as local as possible for as many states as possible. But sometimes they're a little more regional because, like, we have to travel a lot of places to offer them. But for example, today I was in New Jersey, in Newton, New Jersey, and there were like almost 50 teachers there. And they were just coming from a lot of different counties around the area. And New Jersey has a very high standard for financial education. They don't require a full semester of personal finance. Technically, you could take an economics class or a business class and it'll count as a financial education class. We're trying to push to every state to say, you have to take a full semester of personal finance. It has to be personal finance. So if you take business and you spend 2 weeks learning about budgeting, that does not count as personal financial literacy. Personal financial literacy would be a full semester, which is 18 weeks long, of instruction on budgeting, saving, checking, investing, insurance, taxes, financial pitfalls, really looking at everything and making it a holistic education. So yeah, those events are free. Anybody who's an educator can come, and they're on the website, ngpf.org.
I saw there's one in the city coming up. I
That's
might
right.
have to come out,
Yeah.
and you said that free word, and it's like it's true. Like you're like, all right, is this going to be like a timeshare meeting? Like, all right, they tell me I get to come and sit down for free. When I get there, what are they going to
Yeah.
sell me? And I
Yeah.
think I like I said, and it's so great to hear people like you that it's. I talk to big time YouTubers, and it's great. I loved it, but like you're the whole freaking package, and people need to understand that because granted, here on YouTube, we're making a difference, and you probably change people's lives every single day. But when you turn off the cameras, like you said, you're going out there and you're shaking people and being like, this is important stuff. You need to
Yes,
listen.
yes, yes.
Do you have? I'm just curious. Do you have like a favorite? What's your favorite part of personal finance to talk about? Is it getting out of debt? Is it investing? Is it credit card hacking? I don't know what you're into, but like when you're sitting around talking, maybe not with high school
Yeah,
kids, but your money nerd friends, like if me and you were
yeah.
sitting down having a coffee, what do
Mhm.
you like to talk about?
Yeah, no, my top two favorites for sure are investing and credit. Like, credit is such a game, and if you don't know how to play, you're going to lose. And that is literally, once you figure that out and you understand the rules of the game and you start playing by the rules, you will quickly see a lot of success with your credit score and with your credit in general. So for me, I learned the rules late in the game, but I used the rules to my advantage. I started to follow them and do everything I could to stay within, the confines of the 5 factors of credit. And once I learned that, I was like, oh, this is easy. If I knew this earlier, I would have always had a perfect credit score. And so that's why I really love talking about it, because I think if you present it as like a game and these are the rules and this is how you play, people are like, oh, like mind blown. I wish I knew that. And then, they're excited to go and apply it immediately to their lives. And then investing, I love because I'm the first person in my family to invest in the stock market. And I think that is a huge thing. Like for me, for people that have a similar background to me, it helps them to see like you can invest in the stock market. You are an investor. You don't have to go Google an investor. Look in the mirror. You are an investor. And I know it sounds scary to a lot of people to think about the stock market. Like, I never heard about the stock market growing up. I never talked about it. I never thought about it. Even in college, nothing. Nobody ever used that language around me. No one ever mentioned it until I started to read about personal finance. I realized that if I don't start right away, I'm going to miss out on a huge opportunity to have a very comfortable retirement, unlike a lot of the older people in my family now that are struggling at retirement because they were not prepared. So I knew that I didn't want to do that. So investing in credit, those are my top two.
I know my subscriber base very well, and I know there's women from my subscriber base that are watching this right now that are like so fired up.
Yeah.
No, because and I'll tell you this, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but when I first started, I was a get out of debt guy, and I found myself pretty much one of the few males in the debt-free community space, one of the few men talking about budgeting and grocery hauls all back in the day. And I think, and speaking with other females in my masterminds and stuff like that, that you're kind of on that opposite spectrum where there's not many females out there talking about investing. And I want to know, like, do you see that paradigm as well? And if so, why do you think that's the case? Why are there so many amazing debt-free community female YouTubers out there, but very few of them are really pushing the investment game like you are?
Yeah, I think it's because if you think about traditionally speaking, the roles of, men and women in the household, like the man is going to be the one who's going to earn the money and make the money grow. And the woman is going to be the one to budget it and make sure that you could get the groceries for that much money and make sure that, these things are handled. And so it's kind of like, that's how it plays out in society, which is really sad because there's no reason why those gender roles have to be like that. Like they're really, it's 2020 in a few weeks. Like there's no reason why that should be the case. But a lot of times they do play out, those roles do play out in society, those historical gender roles. And I feel like depending on the culture that you're from, it could even be more exacerbated. Like in my culture, a lot of Latino households is like this, where the women, you stay home, you cook, you clean, and you serve your man. And then the man comes home and kicks off his shoes and you serve him food and you rub his feet and you whatever you need. And then so kind of, that usually tends to show in the finances as well. The men control the finances and they know about how to make money grow and how to make investments. And, women, you just worry about making sure that there's enough food so you can cook. You get the grocery budget, you save money that way. And so, and that's, it's really frustrating to see that. But what I think also makes it even worse is that when you go online or when you go to read books, most of the people talking confidently about investing and the stock market and return on investment and all these kind of things are men. They're mostly old men. And so it's kind of like now it's even further removed from women and from young women and even from young men. It feels like an old guy thing. It doesn't feel like a young generation thing, and it doesn't feel like a thing for women. And it doesn't feel like a thing for, people of color. So I think all those kind of demographics, they start to make you feel like that's not for me. I'm going to focus on what is for me, what I can control, what I do understand, what I feel comfortable with. And, I'm going to leave that investing stuff for those old guys. And so I think that's a narrative that we have to start changing actively by getting younger voices in the space, like you and me, and by getting, women in the space to talk about this as well. And so, and thank you for using your platform to highlight my story, because as a man, you're making space to bring girls onto your channel, which I think is really important. So yeah, all of that kind of cross collaboration helps so much with changing the narrative to say, you don't have to just know budgeting and spending. You can also understand all of the complicated things in personal finance, quote unquote complicated, because it's really not that complicated. Right. But the things that seem complicated, you can understand as well.
Yeah, no, and like, I want as many women on here as possible because you're so right. And man, you must make a guy's head spin on the dating scene with like, who is this pretty girl talking about the stock market like that? No,
It's funny. You're wearing a T-shirt that says Yale University. My boyfriend graduated from Yale University, and he's not here right now, thank goodness, because if he was in the apartment, he'll be like, Yale. I'm like, nah, get out of here. Brown is better.
This is completely by accident. I did not wear this on purpose, and for the record, I did not go to Yale. This is from writing a student recommendation letter. So
that's so
I went to Stony Brook, just a regular old state school.
Listen, Stony Brook is great too.
Do you ever feel like your credibility is like? Does anybody ever put down your credibility because you are a woman, or do they like? Once they get to Brown, they're like, okay, hold on, let's give this girl her due notice. And then they look at your resume is unbelievable. And then you top it off with do you even need to ever get to that? Or are you kind of the one, you come across as someone to me that's like, if somebody's like blowing you off, you're like, I don't have time for you. Go away. I'll find somebody to listen.
Right. So yeah, that's definitely my approach more so nowadays. Like, oh, if you don't want to listen or you don't think that there's anything that you could gain from me, then, that's your loss. But at the same time, I do see what you're saying, because there have been workshops, for work and even, for my own stuff that I go out and do speaking gigs, where I've seen like particularly older men who like knows the stock market a little bit about it. And then once I start talking about investing, they're like, what's this little girl over here going to teach me about investing in stocks? And, so I definitely have seen that before for sure. I'm not going to say that it's prevalent because a lot of times teachers, which is the demographic that I work with through my job, a lot of times teachers don't know a lot about investing. They have a 403b, they might even have a pension, but they don't know what's in those investment vehicles. They don't know what's in there. They don't know what the fees are. They don't even know if it's diversified or what, what's covered in there. They have no idea. So when they do see like a former teacher coming up with confidence to talk about investing, if anything, their eyes actually light up like, wow, I'm so glad that somebody's teaching me this, because they probably never had anybody sit down and talk to them about it in plain English. When you get, I remember, you could probably relate to this. When I got my first teaching job, I got my 403b packet from the HR lady, and she was like, okay, you have to submit this by next Friday at 3 p.m. And I was like, wait, what? I don't know how to fill it out. Like, what do I put? She's like, oh, I can't give you investment advice. You have to go to a financial professional if you want investment advice. I'm like, but you gave me these forms, and you're asking me to submit them, and you're not going to tell me how to fill them out. What do I write? And she's like, no, I can't give you investment advice. So I was really frustrated with setting up my 403b because I didn't even understand how to freaking do it. And I didn't know what any of the things on that paper meant. So that was my introduction to understanding investing. And it was very frustrating. And that's probably how a lot of teachers also feel. So being able to get educated about it, if anything, is a breath of fresh air for a lot of teachers.
And then you get to that professional, and then you find out years down the road that that person they sent you to was there to slay you with fees and just one of the greatest things about my channel is when teachers that I teach with come and find me and they're like, "Can you tell me about that 457 again?" And I'm like,
Yep.
"Of course I can." And I'm like,
Yeah.
and
And
and,
I
and
saw your video. I saw your video about you hate 403bs and 401ks. And I'm like, I don't mind it if that's the only way you're going to invest and you're not going to do it on your own because you don't have the motivation or the self-control. Fine. Then do the 403b because it's better to have something than nothing. But I am totally in agreement with you that I would much rather have a 457 or a Roth IRA in place and max that before even trying to put anything into a 403b or 401k. A lot of people don't understand those fees are so ridiculous. So like
so
that only comes with somebody sitting and explicitly explaining it to you. And that never happens because like you said, those people that come to talk to you about your retirement package, those are salespeople.
right.
Those are salesmen and saleswomen, and they are not meant to tell you what is in your best interest. They are there to tell you what's in their best interest for their commission, for their check, and for their company. And so you always have to ask a million questions before you agree to any kind of plan. But if you don't know what questions to ask, then you're kind of stuck. So it's
Yeah.
definitely a big problem. It's definitely a big problem.
That video that I made actually got a ton of hate because people came and they were like, "Oh, well, I have this with these fees, and that's great." And I had to come back and say, listen, the point of the video wasn't necessarily to knock it. The point of the video, which a
Exactly.
lot of people did get this point, was just to look, was just to go to your 403b and say, "Am I getting punched in the face here?" And the amount of feedback I got, like, "Hey, Brad," and because right now, my 403b is with Vanguard and everything is in VTSAX. But I was able to make those changes because I
We're
hope that,
educated.
yeah, because I got educated. And oh my gosh, this is so great. I feel like I could go down a rabbit hole with you and this could turn into 5 hours. And with your travel schedule, man, your Insta story, you are at air gosh, you are all over the freaking place. But I always like to give people an opportunity. I put you on a hot seat. Do you have any questions for me that you want me to answer? And I could do that for you, and then I'll let you on your way.
Yes. I'm so curious because I've never met another teacher who talks about such a personal topic on YouTube publicly. And I always struggle with this issue. So I would love to pick your brain about this because I'm so nervous sometimes to be like to what I say about, how much I earn or how much I save or what I do with my money or what my values are or what my hobbies are, or even just the way that I act sometimes on the internet. I'm like, oh, this is like a little like I have a professional persona like Miss Espinal, right, to my students, but then I also have like Miss BeHelpful, Yanely, like who I am. And so it's really weird to me, like when my students see the videos or when they see me online or when, how do you balance that? Because you even mentioned that your students watch your videos sometimes. And
Yeah.
so how do you kind of balance that, like, Mr. Finn versus Brad Finn and the Finn mindset? Like, how do you balance
So I think in the beginning I hid it from everyone. Even my wife didn't know for
that?
months. And
Wow.
and I and there was that fear of people finding out. I was never going to end up in the principal's office like, "Hey, I heard you're on the internet telling people they should try and get out of debt and become wealthy." And there's definitely been times where I talked about like 403Bs, and I never specifically say where I teach, and I don't bring my school issues. I never bring students into my videos. I would never talk about this, that, or the other thing, but it's more that I had to get proud of it, and I think the grade level I teach and the area that I teach in, I teach in a very mature district, very intelligent people, and I teach seniors and juniors. So if anything, they started coming to me and asking me questions about student loans and things like that. And
That's
I'm like,
awesome,
here, watch this video. And
right?
every once in a while, like I'll get a random kid like, nice YouTube channel. But then I'm like, they're kids, right? They're just kids. So I say thank you very much. And in the beginning it was super stressful, but now 2 3 years later, having parents email the Fin mindset and say, hey, I'm blah blah blah's parent, can you help me just think about this? Or like I said, the now I'm 8 years in my new school. I always felt like the baby in the district. Now I have so
Yeah,
many teachers under me, so many younger teachers that I can help. And
right,
that credibility thing, if I walked up to a new teacher and I was like, hey, let me tell you about the 457, they'd be like, hmm. But if I'm like, hey, if you ever have any questions about a 457, here's my YouTube channel and here's my video on it. And then they're like, joke. And then they're like, oh, wow, this dude's got 5,000 subs. Maybe he
right.
knows what's going on. And if anything, it was really just becoming super proud of what I was doing and super proud of the feedback that I was giving to people. And like I
Yeah,
said, they'll make fun of me about anything. I could be
yeah.
making I can make be
You're the
making
teacher. They're gonna roast you. That's what kids do.
yeah, I could be making millions playing Fortnite and they'd still be making fun of me, and
Nah, they think you the coolest person ever if you were doing that.
and and like I said, and I'm also very happy go lucky. I have no problem joking on myself. I
Yeah,
also keep it very, very business. When I talk about personal finance in class, it's after school, it's in the hallway. I take my physics very, very seriously. So there's never I don't blend them so much. And then I was never really a big social media guy, so having like a Brad Finn Instagram and stuff, I never had that. So this was actually kind of cool because the kids are always like, "Oh, you got an Instagram? You got an Instagram? You got Snapchat?" I don't have a Snapchat, but it was easier just to be like, "Oh, you want to follow me on Instagram? Yeah, follow the Fin Mindset." And they get all excited, and then they go on. They're like,
yeah. Oh, I could learn.
they're like 48% of your IRA maxed out. This is boring. And that's what they tell me.
Oh my
What's your
God.
YouTube channel about? I'm like, yeah, go find out and see if you want to
Yeah.
watch. And they
What's
know.
funny is that in a few years, when they're in college or out of college, they're going to come right back to that Fit Mindset channel and start trying to learn about it because they're going to realize that they need it when they're in their early 20s and they're trying to figure out how to pay back debt and how to figure out navigating life as an independent person for the first time. So it's interesting that they're laughing now because they're going to come back to it and then they're going to be like, thank you so much, Mr. Finn. I literally learned from your videos. So this is going to help me in my real life right now.
It's
Like
just
that's what's going to happen.
yeah, it's another avenue that, I could be there for them. Like I had
Yeah.
like you make a really good point. I had a student that I had 2 years ago email me and say, "Hey, Mr. Finn, I just want to let you know I opened a Capital One Performance 360 account with your link, and I'm getting 1.9% interest, and I was getting 0.01 at Chase. Thank you." And
That's
I'm like, that
awesome.
has nothing to do with physics, and I'm so pumped. And
Yep.
and that's gonna, like you said, that's gonna start happening. And students come to me, and the hard part too, though, and I'm sure you get this, is they come to me and they're like, I'll be like, "Oh, how's your college application process going?" Like, you're not gonna be happy with my decision because I'm gonna have some student loan debt. I'm like, I'm not here to judge you, bro.
No,
Yeah, I'm
right.
not here to judge. So many of
Yeah.
my friends are like, they don't want to talk to me about money because they think I'm gonna judge. I'm like, no, no, I'm here to help,
Yes.
man. Like, I am
Oh
not
my
a,
gosh, I totally hear you on that.
I'm
I
not
have
a,
people all the time. They're like, "Oh, Miss BeHelpful wouldn't approve of this, but I'm going to brunch." I'm like, "Girl, go to brunch. Like, live your life. Just don't go to brunch every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but go to brunch when you want." I mean, it's like people think that we're here to be like cracking the whip on their money decisions. Like, that's not the point. If you
no,
put it in the budget, go ahead and do it. Like,
if you,
I'm not here to judge.
I tell people all the time, like, yeah, I'm a frugal minimalist. I drive a $30,000 truck. It's paid off. I saved up money. I paid for it. I got rid
There
of
you
it. Like,
go.
yeah, no,
Yep.
that's it's so true. And I love being the teacher thing, and I love the combination of both because, like I
Yeah.
said, it adds another dynamic. It shows that I'm a real person, right? We talk about money and we talk about being a real person, and I talk about the things that I'm doing outside of teaching that aren't partying my ass off and living. I live by example. You know,
Right. Right.
they see me in the same t-shirt, or they see me repeating clothes or bringing peanut butter and jelly to lunch every day, and they know that that's like a reality. But then they
Yep.
also see how freaking happy I am. I got two little kids, I got a great wife, awesome house,
Yeah.
and everyone thinks I'm like this spreadsheet nerd, but I'm really just I'm living my best life,
That's right. That's right.
living below my means.
Yeah. And that's so funny how different that can be for people. Like, like that, the happiness that you get from having that full control of your choices with your money and your life is like, nobody can take that from you. Nobody can take that from you. So that's what I love the best about being in control of my money and my choices is like, nobody can take my joy. I love the way that I make decisions with my life. I love my tiny little minimalist apartment. Somebody made fun of my apartment the other day on YouTube. They're like, she looked like she lives in an IKEA ad or something. I'm like, that's right. I don't put anything on my walls. I'm so minimal, but you know what? It makes me happy. So I'm good.
Right. House tours are trending right now. They
Hmm.
are. My second or third most viewed video is a house tour 2 years ago, and now you got all everyone's doing a house tour.
That's
Graham's
so
doing one,
funny.
Nate's doing one, Ryan Scribner's
Yeah.
doing one.
Now people are curious. They want to
Maybe,
know where where you at. You
maybe
can
you
do
got to
it.
do your IKEA house tour.
Oh my Lord. Do you want to know what my house tour would be like? There's wall one, there's wall two, there's wall three, there's wall four. I live in a studio, and that's the only way I can afford to live in New York City because it is ridiculous rent. But yeah, if you guys want a house tour, I'll show you the four walls.
My old house, I lived in a smaller house too, and I used to joke with my students that I can stand at the front door and look out every single window in the house.
There you go.
That's how
There you
small
go.
the
There's
house
your house
was.
tour. There's your house tour.
I could I had to reach for one of the windows, but from the carpet inside my front door, I could look out every single window in the whole
There
house.
you go.
So I'm going to list
Oh
all of
man.
your information in the description, but I want them to hear it from you. Best way to find you, contact you, drop you a DM. Where can we find you?
Yeah, great. So you're on YouTube. You can find my YouTube channel, Miss Be Helpful, MissBe Helpful. And then same handle everywhere, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And I'm not as active on Twitter or Snapchat, but I do have the handles up. And mostly I'm active on Instagram, on YouTube, and on Facebook. But you guys can find me literally anywhere. And then my email is missbehelpful@gmail.com. And I do answer almost every single email. As long as it's not creepy, I'll probably answer it.
As
So
long
just keep it clean, people, and I
as-
will respond.
Awesome. Yeah, no, and I will say for the record, you are an extremely busy person, and I'm sure they got that like, and I got the opportunity to do this, and when I DM you, it takes a couple of days. Like, yeah, people should never expect from anybody like,
Yeah,
like people always say like, "Hey, Brad, sorry I didn't get back to you." I'm like, "We're not dating, bro."
exactly. You don't
Like,
owe me nothing. You're making time for me, and I appreciate it.
yeah,
That is so
yeah,
true.
we don't have a 24-hour rule here. Like, it's so funny. Like, oh, sorry
Yeah,
for the delayed response. Hey, man, I'm for that. But awesome.
yeah.
Thank you so much. I
Thank you.
cannot tell you again. And I've done so many of these, and every once in a while, one pops up that I cannot wait to just go back and edit and watch over and over again. This is going to be so I'm going to chuckle a lot.
Yay!
You are the real deal. And it's good for people, I think, to see in this aspect that that energy that you have in your channel, it's real. And here it is right in front of you. And
Thank
I look for,
you.
I really am going to try and get out and see in the city. I'm really, really interested in the next gen finance
Yeah,
piece,
yeah.
especially being in school. So I'll be following along and seeing what you're doing. And
Awesome.
I can't wait to, watch your successes and see what you got going on next.
Yeah, same. Likewise, man. Thank you so much, Brad. I appreciate it. I appreciate the feature and the conversation. It was great. Thanks for having me.